me about what we're smoking.
Well, actually, this is interesting. To some people. This is plum pudding, which is put out by the Seattle Pipe Club, one of the bigger clubs in the U.S., and one of their members, Joe Lankford, does their tobacco blending, and it's produced by Cornell and Deal, but it's mixed by Joe Lankford.
It's a very, very, very smooth English.
Very rich, though. I'm still drinking the Gentleman Jack. We're filming 2 episodes back to back this time.
Because it takes a while to set it up, and we're trying to make it better for viewers' enjoyment with a little more production involved. And so, you guys don't care. Never mind.
Yeah. He's drinking Newcastle.
The one and only Newcastle Brown Ale. Ooh, very cinnamony with this. Good for the season.
Yeah.
So, last week we kind of introduced Sixton and his incredible influence and flat-out creation of what we call artisan pipes today.
Mm-hmm.
And we mentioned a couple techniques that he brought to the table that we utilize. The shaping wheel, for one, which we did a podcast on that. But the bigger thing is the concept of shaping first and drilling second. So you actually shape the pipe that you want out of the block first, and then you drill it second, which sounds weird because doesn't it make sense to drill the engineering first and then shape around that?
He elevated pipe making to a new level because before it was all about function.
It was strictly a craft.
Right, and actually there's a very interesting debate on the pipemakersforum.com right now about this art versus craft kind of a thing. There are not a lot, but there are quite a few videos on YouTube on how to use a drill press and to get the right tools, and you just drill a pipe and then you shape it, which is great, and everyone should do that because the functionality and the purpose, the utilization of a pipe is something that we all relate to, period. Basically, everything that we do is exactly what he did. There's a few little minor tweaks, but shaping with a disc, drilling second, hand cut stems with the funneled airway that I think we did on another podcast, right?
Yeah.
All of those
the
things,
earlier ones.
all the things that make high grade pipes high grade, he came up with. We view pipe making as an art.
Yeah.
And I hesitate to say this because I think some people might take it wrong, but I'll just say it. We are artists. We view ourselves as artists working with briar and the constraints of the smoking pipe. Because that's one of the things that all art has constraints to it. Whether it's woodworking like Nakashima, George Nakashima, or painting with you have the constraints of the wood, you have the constraints of the canvas, or if an architect has the constraints of gravity and engineering, or any kind of art has constraints, and we have a lot of constraints, and because we need the pipe to smoke perfectly.
Which is what shaping first and drilling second kind of it makes it even more interesting, is because you're actually shaping the pipe, following the grain, figuring out the design you want three-dimensionally, not just the side profile or the top profile or the front profile. It's all of the dimensions therein, which we discussed in another podcast as well. But knowing that you're drilling it later, you have to know. You have to know the craft. You have to know how to drill and how to make a functional pipe. But then shaping a pipe artistically and then bringing the constraints within it and finishing it up is an art, in our opinion. Yeah. People, I'm sure, will disagree with us.
But the techniques that you have, the craft of making the holes line up, of getting a good finish,
of learning how to sandblast properly, of learning how to properly file a stem. All those things are the basics of making a pipe. And once you can master those, you can move on to the next level of thinking about the lines and the beauty and the... Those are all just tools in your tool bag to making art. This is just kind of an outline of what Sixten has taught us as pipe makers, you know, through several generations of pipe makers. And we'll, like we said last week, we're going to start talking a little bit more about the actual history and maybe certain makers and where they came from and who they learned from, that kind of thing. Well, I hope you have a holiday season that is delightful.
We'll see you next week.